always handy to have those last minute reminders before you head out on track. This one's particularly important because I've swapped to slightly thicker racing front discs, so they need some time to bed in. But anytime you change your brake pads, it's always a good idea to give them a little time to bed into. This is me entering the circuit for the very first time on this bike since it was built, so quite a lot of anticipation was building up to this moment. I'll just take a look over my shoulder as I enter the circuit, even though I know where the first one's out and the track should be empty. It's just a good habit to always look over your shoulder as you enter any circuit any time. This will be a fairly steady lap, just building my way into it. I'm also going to listen to the bike and make sure it's not doing anything that it shouldn't, and there's no sensation or noise that's out of character. But also because this is the first time on a Honda superbike for me since 2010, so a 14-year gap between riding the Honda superbike, so quite a lot has changed with the bikes in that period. So I just want to learn and feel the bike for what it is and get used to it. My first impressions of the bike were good, and even at this early stage I can already start to read the character and the attitude of the bike, and that it's easy to get to an apex, and it's quite nimble in its change of direction and stable during braking and accelerating out of turns. Now that opening lap is complete and the bike's proven itself, I'll jump forward a few laps to where I'm going a little quicker. In this footage, I'm just finishing lap 4 with a 32.7 and beginning lap 5. I'm going back 2 gears to 4th, but I think when I return to the circuit with the correct gearing, I should be able to manage just 1 gear back to 5th, and the RPM should be high enough to pull on the exit of turn 1. On the entry to turn 2, I get back to 2nd gear, and because it's a hairpin, it's a double apex, so you'll see I pull an apex on the way in and then let the bike run not even as far as mid-track in the middle of the turn, but then pull it in really tight for a second apex on the exit. And this is critical to the speed and position you can run into turn 3. So I'll sacrifice possibly a little bit of time at turn 2, but that's in order to maximize the acceleration and track position through and exiting turn 3. Just come over a rise, which is where the track goes over the tunnel for the entry into the circuit, and then it's a steep downhill into turn 4. As the bike crests the hill, it wants to wheelie over the rise, but with the use of the thumb brake and the anti-wheelie function that this bike has, it's not too much to manage. And this entry to turn 4 is where we'll get the maximum fork travel, because we're coming from a downhill and then the track levels out and then starts to rise again just before the apex, so you get a lot of front end load. And then you crest again a small rise just before change in direction into turn 5, which then goes downhill, and then you start to go up a rise again on the exit of turn 5. Back in 2001, which was my first year on a superbike, this part of the circuit was much more interesting. There was a slight right-hand kink before you flicked over to the left. The circuit's since been redesigned, and it just goes into a basic 90-degree left. But it's still quite technical because this is going downhill. There's a bump in the track during braking, which often unsettles the bike, and then you have a sense of the track feeling very off-cambered right at the apex. It's quite critical to get the bike turned well before the apex so that you can get up off the edge of the tyre and accelerate up the hill, because on the superbikes they want to spin a lot on that exit. This is the famous turn 9, where back in 1996 Alex Creville attempted to go up the inside of Mick Doohan on the final lap of the 500 Grand Prix. He didn't make the pass, they just came together and both crashed out. So in this lap I'm going back to second gear, and similar to the turn 2 situation, it's a hairpin, so I get an apex quite early and then let the bike ever so slightly drift out a little bit in the middle to come back for a second apex and try and accelerate strong on the way out, because there's a bit of a straight afterwards. But again, this is another corner where I feel like the gearing's let me down a little bit. Now this is the entry into turn 10, and the corner itself is quite simple, but where it gets technical is your positioning for when you change direction into turn 11, and when you start to change direction, it's quite important to get the bike upright early, so it's just a flick from the center of the tire over to the left for turn 11, as opposed to if you leave it too late, you're trying to lift the bike up from the right hand side into the middle and then over to the left, and there just isn't enough time to get that all happening in a small space. So the timing and position is critical, and then you've got turn 12, which is the last turn onto the start finish, so quite a lot of time to be made up in this section. Now, a 32.2 is no amazing lap time for a superbike around this circuit, given that I did a 29.8 last year. However, just 5 laps in on a brand new bike, I'm really pleased with the way it's ran, and I'm actually quite proud of what we've been able to achieve.